looks like. We've got a viewer window here where you're going to see the presentation today. And we'll actually be showing you what Respondus 4 looks like, as well as some content. So make that as big as you can so you can see and read everything. You can maximize the screen or drag it around here. Then you also have a control panel over here on the right. If you want to click those arrows, it opens it up for you. There you get the audio information. 2 ways to listen today. You can use voice over IP by selecting the mic and speakers option. If you're using that, don't worry about muting yourself. Everybody's automatically muted. These training sessions are so big, and while we'd love to hear from you, we simply can't hear from everybody. So you're all muted, but you can communicate with us through the questions pane down here. And this is where we'd love for you to submit your questions. As we go through the presentation, we'll read as many of them as we can out loud at the end and answer them for you. If you're having any trouble, most commonly folks who are using a shared wireless connection, maybe when that connection gets a little weaker, have trouble hearing. In that case, you can switch to the call-in number. Select use telephone, and that number will show up here. So I suggest that as your first option for if you have trouble hearing me. You also can enlist the help of our staff. A bunch of Respondus folks on the call today to help everybody. Just click this little hand raise button right there, and that'll alert them to your needs. But if you just want to get that control panel out of the way, click that arrow button again, and it'll hide it for you so you can see more, and we're off. Now, knowing that there are some folks that might even be new to Respondus as a company and never have seen anything else that we do, I just want to do a quick overview of who we are. We provide tools to help instructors, so all of you, and your institutions with online assessment. So today's training is on our flagship application, Respondus 4.0, that makes creating and managing your online tests fast and easy. But we also have some other applications. You may have heard of Lockdown Browser, the custom browser that prevents digital cheating during online tests. We also have Respondus Monitor, which works with Lockdown Browser and adds a webcam, so it deters students from cheating in those non-proctored test environments. You may have also seen our StudyMate line of applications that engages students with course content through learning activities and self-assessments that instructors can create and make available to students. And then last but not least, something we will talk about today is the Respondus Test Bank Network, which is a free service that provides official publisher test banks ready to use with Respondus 4 and StudyMate. But we're not going to talk about any of those other applications except for Respondus 4 today. So again, for those of you new, Respondus 4 is an exam authoring and management tool. So it's an application as an instructor. You download and install it to your computer, and with it, you can create assessments for your online courses. It uses an offline, Windows-based environment, very simple, very familiar, very easy to use. Before I jump in, I just want to get a sense of you as an audience. I'm going to launch a quick poll, and I just have one question for you. Are you currently using Respondus 4 to create your online test? So yes, no, or it's been a long time since I've done it. So I just get a sense of what our level of experience is here. And with the majority of you voting, a long majority of you, are not using Respondus 4, and it looks like some of you haven't used it ever before, so you're new, which is great. I'm glad you joined today. I think you'll be excited by some of the features that you see. Those of you who said yes, don't worry. We're going to go deeper into some of those features that you may not even know about, and you'll learn some best practices as well. So today we are going to focus on a few features in Respondus 4 that make it easy to use existing content for your test questions. So being able to import from Word files. I'm sure you have test questions and content in Word documents. Talk about using, as I mentioned before, official publisher test banks. And being able to retrieve existing questions from tests or pools of questions you already have in your online courses. And then we'll also, and we'll talk about actually the last item on here, simply creating and editing those test questions directly in the templates provided in Respondus 4. And then I'll also highlight a few features that help you manage the content that you can use in your exam. So how you can publish them to an online course or print them, create and restore archives and share files. And as we go through each one of these sections, I'll highlight a few tips or best practices for using each feature effectively, both to make things easy on you and for effective online testing. So again, knowing that a few of you are new, I want to just talk a little bit about background here on why folks use Respondus 4. We have heard it's been around for 13 years, thousands of users. A lot of institutions have campus-wide licenses, or folks that have single user licenses. And we hear over and over and over again, it simply is the easiest way to create tests for your online courses. Because, in large part, because it saves you a lot of time, sometimes hours. When you're using your existing content, we'll talk about the import wizard, or those test banks we talked about before, or even just having one place to manage all of your content, your test content, outside of your online courses. So that's the why and the background. Let's jump in. As I mentioned today, we are going to actually get into the application and show you what it looks like and do some real things here. So I am opening Respondus 4 right now. This is what the application looks like when it's been downloaded and installed. There's a little icon down here with an R in it, so you know it's Respondus. And I'll just do a quick overview of how it's organized to orient you to the application, knowing that a lot of you are new. We've got these tabs that go across the top, and we're going to see each one of these as we go through today's training. Here on the Start tab, the first thing I'll point out is what we call the personality. And that basically corresponds to what learning system you're using. So that's the first thing you want to do, is make sure you select which learning system you use, because that'll help you in the formatting of the questions so they match what's available in your learning system, as well as being able to publish to those courses. And as you can see, we have nice integrations with a whole bunch of them, as well as a neutral IMS QTI format. So I'm going to stick around in Blackboard just for today, but then I want to talk about what else is on the Start tab briefly. You've got the ability to open an existing Respondus file, create a brand new file from scratch, or bringing in other content this way. Here's that test bank network. We'll get to that in a moment. You can also copy items from other files easily using the exam wizard. And I'm going to start here with this import wizard, because that is the most popular feature and one of the ones that people say, wow, that really saves me a lot of time. So I'm going to actually show you a Word document, and I'm going to bring that Word document into Respondus 4, go through the process of creating that test, and then publish it for you, so you can see what that looks like too. So again, we hear over and over again that this saves so much time. So you have this content already in the Word document. You want to keep it. So here's what you have to do. All you have to do is a little bit of formatting in that document. So I'm going to scroll to the top here. This is a Word file. And now, I should mention too, you can import from other file types as well. And I'll show you those in a moment. I just happen to use the one that's the most common. And I have test questions in this Word file. And I've done a little bit of formatting here. Generally speaking, you want to, if you're using like a multiple choice question, you want to number your questions, letter your answer choices. There are two ways to indicate a correct answer. I can either put an asterisk right here, or I can use an answer key. Let me just scroll to the end. There's an answer key at the end of the document. Now that's a simple multiple choice question, but look at what I can do. I can include things like images, equations. I can do lots of formatting, just like Word formatting, bold, italics. I can embed images. So if it's in the Word document, it'll be brought right into Respondus just like that. Here's a chart, there's a photo, a flow chart, a bulleted list, all kinds of rich content that you might have in your test question. And not just multiple choice. This actually is a true-false question that's formatted similarly to multiple choice, which is T or F or true or false. And what you're seeing highlighted here is a way to include feedback. So if you generally show feedback when a student submits an answer to tell them if they got it right or wrong, or what you want them to learn from it, you can do that in Respondus too. And then there are lots of other question types. I'm sure you're aware of that. Your learning system supports many different question types. So here's an example of a fill in the blank type of question. It might be called something different depending on the work, the learning system that you use. But this might be how you format something like that. Now, there's only one answer to this particular question, but the way I put my answers up here is I'm allowing my students to put in 4 formats of the same answer. Maybe I'm okay with misspelling or not using Rene Descartes' full name, just his last name, or whatever the case may be. And you're going to do essay questions. That's an essay question. You simply need to indicate that it is type E. I'm sure I can type F, fill in the blank. And I'll mention too, as I'm talking about some of these things, for those of you new, don't worry about taking notes. I'm sorry if I didn't say this earlier. I'm going to show you the file that's built into Respondus that tells you exactly how to do this formatting. So you have a nice reference tool right in the application. So a couple other things, point values, and that's your answer key right there. So you might have your questions in a format very similar to this, and it just takes a few minutes to adjust that format. Once I close that document, go back to Respondus, now I'm going to bring in that content from the Word file. Now before I do that, let me just point out the help file here. See this question mark, and you're going to see this in a lot of different places throughout the application. That's where you're going to find that help file. So we were on the Start menu. If I go to the Importing Questions area, here's the standard format for importing documents. If I click that, I get all of the details on how to format that Word file. Now this seems like a lot of information, but I'll tell you, once you do it once, maybe even print this out as a reference, it's really simple. It becomes sort of a habit. It's very easy to do. And we've got some checks and balances built into Respondus as well. So you can use this formatting file to do all those different question types and all the other elements of your questions, like point values and titles. Let's go ahead and do the import so I can show you how fast it is. So when I open the import wizard, first I'm going to select the type of file to import. I mentioned there were lots of other file types you could use. Plain text, rich text, Word, both the old DOC and the new DOCX versions, comma delimited files, and study-made class format. So if you're using one of our other applications to create learning activities, you can bring that content in as well. This is a docx file, so that's what I'm going to pick. Then I'm going to browse to my document. This is the one I just had open right there. I can choose to add the questions to the current file or create a new one. Why don't we go ahead and do that? I'm going to call that the training quiz for today is March 19th. And then this nice feature here called Preview allows me to have Respondus check my files before I actually do the import. So that was pretty quick. I had about 20 questions in here. And what this does is just make sure I did all that formatting properly. So if I missed the correct answer selection or didn't put enough line breaks between each question, it will tell me. I can stop the wizard here, go back to the Word file, fix it, save it, and import it again, instead of having to go into Respondus and make those fixes. But I didn't have any errors, no warnings here. So I'm just going to click Finish, and boom, I'm done. That's how fast it was to bring that content in from a Word document. So here are all of those test questions that we just saw. Now, since we're here on the Edit tab, let me explain what this is. The Edit tab is where your content lives. So you have over here on the left templates that correspond to the question type in your learning system. So we're in the Blackboard personality. This is what the Blackboard question types are called. So if you were in Moodle, they might be called something slightly different, and maybe some would be available, some wouldn't. Then when you see the template here, this is where you can actually enter questions one at a time. So for multiple choice, I've got a space for question wording, all of my answer choices, where to select the correct one. I can assign things like point values, feedback, and so on. See, I have questions in here because I just imported them. So this question list down on the bottom is really useful because I can now take a look at these questions. I can preview them. Go ahead and see what this one looks like. Okay. I can bring them into the template if I need to make changes to them from here. Great. I can reorder them. We'll get back to this and talk about this in a little bit more detail. But I want to show you what this all looks like in your learning system too. So promise I'll come back to the Edit tab. Let's just go ahead and publish this quiz as it is. So I just brought it in from Word. I'm not going to touch it. I'm just going to make it available in my learning system. I'm going to skip over the Settings tab and come back to it in a moment. Let's go straight to Preview and Publish. So this tab here is before you're going to make this quiz or put this quiz into your online course. I strongly recommend that you preview your file before you do that because you want to see all the pieces together. And from here, you can even make changes if you need to. So if I click Modify Item, it's going to take me to this question on that Edit tab. So if I see something that I missed, I can fix it here before I actually make it available in my course. Let's say I've previewed it and I've done this already and everything looks good. Now I'm going to select Publish. Now here I have another wizard. This is a Publish wizard that is going to lead me through the steps to make this test available in my course. Right? So I'm going to take all this content and then the settings, which we'll get back to, but any settings I might have applied, I'm just going to dump it into my online course for me. So here I can publish to a single course. In some cases I might be able to publish the same quiz to multiple courses. You know, teaching a couple sections. or in some cases I can also save the questions to a pool or question bank, something like that. And then what you see here is the information about my online courses. So this is my institution's Blackboard server. If you don't see this information here, okay, so if you have a campus-wide license of Respondus, this might have been entered for you by the license administrator. It's something called the pre-configured server settings. For you license administrators out there, I strongly suggest using that feature. If you're not, it saves your instructors a bunch of clicks in this process. But if you're not, or you don't have this set up yet, or you're using it for the first time, you can add this information really easily. So you simply click Add New Server. So here's where maybe you check for those settings that your administrator may have done. But let's say, no, I need to enter them manually. Now, this looks like a lot of information, some technical stuff, but really all this is asking you to do is to copy and paste some web links from my online course. So this one says go to my login page and then go to a course. And Respondus is going to do the job of pulling all the technical stuff out of there for you. Then you can just name that course. Maybe just you name it one institution that you teach at, one of the different institutions. And then your username and password. So this is your login as an instructor to your online course. So that's all you have to do to set this up. And you can save it, and it'll be there the next time you go to publish. I'm going to go ahead and publish with my already pre-configured server settings. So when I click Next, now it's asking me, well, what course do you want to publish to? Because I actually am an instructor on a bunch of different courses here. Let's go ahead and publish this to a psychology course. It was a geometry test. Don't mind my content. And then it's going to ask me if I want to create a new test, or maybe I want to replace an existing one, or one of those question pools. It might be called something different again in a different learning system. This will apply some of the settings that we'll get back to in a moment to the test. And then I'll click Next. Select that content area where my tests are going to live. And now Respondus is uploading all those questions, including all of the images, the correct answers, the feedback, the point values, all of those things that I have put into Respondus very easily. And before I even finish explaining it, there's my successful publish of this exam. So that's it. That was publishing a test from a Word document to Respondus into your online course. Now, really quick, what I want to do is just show you what this looks like in your online course, because once we prove to you that I've published this correctly. So I'm going to pop over to my Blackboard course, and I'm going to log in here as an instructor. Go to that course, there's that psychology course that we just were in. Go to the content area, because that's where I published my quiz to, and let's go ahead and find, there it is, the training quiz. Now, it's not available yet for my students, so I can take a peek at it here just to see what it looks like as an instructor. And look at that. There's that question we previewed before. There's the one with all those formulas, images, charts, flow charts, and on and on and on. And it has the correct answers applied, and it has the point values applied, and all of those things. So that was how fast and easy that was. Now let me go back to Respondus quickly, because also here on the Preview and Publish tab are a variety of options to print the test. So yeah, a lot of you might be teaching online and delivering online tests. Certainly, you've got some cases where you might need to give a makeup exam. You might need to give students some special accommodations, time and a half, things like that. So you can print this exam nice and neatly with or without an answer key. You can apply some formatting. Maybe you want to even save it to a file. If you want to save it as a Word document, go right ahead from here. Okay, so you've got a lot of useful options there. All right, so that was just my first example, bringing in some content, publishing it right to my online course. Told you I'd go back to that Edit tab. So let's go back there because there's so much more to talk about here. So as I mentioned before, this is where you can enter items individually. But I also want to spend some time on the advanced formatting features here as well. So remember, these are your question types, and they mirror what's in your learning system. And then as you see across the top, this might look familiar, there's a nice little formatting toolbar up here. It looks a little bit like Word. So you can do things like bold, italicize, underline the text, the content that's in your test question. You can also use an equation editor. So maybe, let me say, just give myself some space here. Maybe I want to build a mathematical or a scientific equation here. So, 3 root 9, and just go ahead and put that right into my test question. It's going to ask if I want to resize it, and then it shows up there like that. Now, I know this question doesn't make much sense, so let's just preview it so you can show that I was able to build that formula really quickly and easily from the equation editor. I can also embed images. This media wizard here walks through, or not just images, sorry, images and video files and audio files. And this media wizard makes it really easy for you. Sometimes in the learning system, bringing in this type of rich content isn't this easy. Maybe you have to know some coding or something like that. But Respondus 4 takes care of all that for you. So you can either upload a file from your computer. You can also link to or embed a file from another website. The examples here are YouTube or Picasa. So I'm going to show you both. Let me upload an image, but notice you can also upload things like audio or video files to listen to something, doc files, PDF. So it will make it very easy for you. It will format it properly and all that. So what I'm going to do is go right to that content area, demo content that I was, and maybe I want to embed this image of a triangle with some angles in it. So I select that image here. It allows me to put in some alt text for screen readers. That's what I describe it. And then here I can resize it if I want to. Now the original size wasn't that big, but if I want to make it a little bit smaller, a little bit bigger, that's fine. And then it puts this little icon here that tells you there's an image there. So let's preview that. And there it is. That's what your students will see when you publish this quiz. Another feature that's really useful is this Power Edit button up here. So what that does is when you put your cursor in the question wording, for example, you now get a bigger space to work with. And it has a few additional formatting options. So tables, you can change the font size, all that kind of stuff. You have more room to work with if you have, a more complex question to include in your assessment. Now, once I've created or edited my item here, I just click Save Changes, and then it will update the content down here in my question list. So this is where all of the questions in my assessment live. Now, this is a handy little tool down here as well because it's got some other advanced features. So I mentioned before that I can pull up a question to preview it, I can edit it, delete it. I can also move it around. I want to reorder the question. I can copy it to use it for a new item. And I can also search. Let's say I have a question, a quiz file that's really big, and I want to make sure that I've covered a certain area of content, like, in the case of geometry, parallel lines are important. So I'm going to search for the keyword parallel and make sure that I've got at least a couple questions that cover that topic. Now notice when I did the search, it opened up full screen. I can also use the expanded view to see all of the questions at once on one screen. Some people don't know that that's there. So instead of scrolling up and down, use this expanded view to see all of your questions in a row. You also can see really quickly the format of the question, what question type it is, how many points have you assigned to it. So some people don't even know that these column headings are sortable. So if I want to sort and see all my essay questions at the top, but notice over here it doesn't change the order of the questions in the file. So if I still want this to be the first question my student sees, it still will be. I need to reorder it if I want to actually make it the third question. So this is a way for you to work with the content you already have easily within Respondus. And we know a lot of learning systems don't make it that easy to do. Now, also here on the Edit tab, there's a couple of options that we've seen elsewhere that you can use to reuse content you have elsewhere. So you can copy items from another Respondus file. Great if you're going to use the same questions in different courses or sections of courses, or maybe from the midterm to the final. You also can, actually let me go ahead and do this because I want to show you one other feature within this. Let's say I want to copy questions from this anatomy quiz. We're going to mix our topics here. Now I get a nice little preview here of all of the questions here, and I can even do a keyword search. So again, if I have really big files with hundreds of test questions in each one, it's easier for me to find the question I'm looking for. And to bring it in, I just select it and click Add to End of or Insert into the list, and then that question just gets brought. Let's order these back in the right order. There it is. That question gets brought right into your current file. Now the other way right here is this test bank network, and that's another way to bring in existing content or create it into your current file, or you can create a new assessment file literally in minutes. So you can access the test bank network from here, but we also saw it back here on the Start tab. Now, to back up a little bit as to what the Respondus Test Bank Network is, it is a partnership, basically, between Respondus and almost all the leading publishers in higher education. So we have test banks from thousands of textbooks in this network. And if you're an instructor who's using one of those textbooks, you've adopted that book for your course, you can get that test bank for free if you're using Respondus 4 or StudyMate through the Respondus Test Bank Network. There's no additional charge for this service. And it's great because if you want to use those test bank items, this is going to save you a ton of time. So what we've done is we've integrated the use of the test bank network right in the middle of Respondus here. So your first step, if you've never used this before, is going to walk you through getting the test bank and then bringing those questions and making them available to you. So if you've never used a test bank before or looking for a new textbook, the first step here is to search for the textbook itself. When I click next, I'm actually going to be taken out to the Respondus website. So if you are taking a peek on our website right now while you're sitting here, if you go to respondus.com, choose the Test Bank Network area of our site and search right here. You can get to this right now. You don't have to open Respondus. And this little form here will just ask you to, give us a title. Maybe I say geometry, or you can search by the author's last name, keyword, publisher, and more. And then when I click search, it's going to give me, oops, sorry folks, maybe I spelled geometry wrong. Let's do anatomy. I know I have one I've used before. There we go. When I get the results of the search, I get all of the textbooks available that meet your criteria. And if I find the book I'm using, maybe it's this one, check the version number, I just click the more information and test bank request form. This gives me more details about the book itself, so I can confirm it's the right one. And then this form down here, you simply fill this out, and it's going to go right to the publisher. The publisher is going to say, yep, that is the instructor who has adopted our book. And then your publisher will send you back an email with some information about how to access the test bank. So let me show you really quickly what that email looks like. Here's an example. So in that email that you might get in a couple days from the publisher, confirms the book that you have requested, and then here's the instructions for Respondus 4, StudyMate class, StudyMate author. And there's that file code and that password. So you'll just need that information. So you can go back into Respondus and go back to the Test Bank Network wizard and register that test bank here. So if I click next here, it's going to bring me to a form where I put in that file code and password and a few other pieces of information. Once you register the test bank, let me go ahead and go to this third option here. You'll see it in this list. So these are the ones that I've already registered. So now, not only do I have access to the test bank within Respondus, it also downloads a copy of the test bank in the background to my computer, so I can look at it offline as well. So let's go ahead and bring in some test bank questions to my current file here. I choose the bank I want to use. Let's go to biology today. And then it's going to ask me to pick which chapter or which section of the test bank I want. So this particular book has 25 chapters. If I pick chapter 4, I'm going to see that I have, I don't know how many here, almost 80 items and 80 test questions in this test bank. So it's a lot of content I can use. And it's great because it's saving me time from writing these questions, but it's also corresponding to the content my students are learning from the book they have for their course. So what you're seeing here are all of those questions in this chapter. You can, again, use this little drop-down menu and preview each item if you want to see the whole thing and the correct answer. You also get some information about how the test bank item is being used. There's a popularity indicator here that shows you how often that particular item has been used by other instructors, not just your institution, but anyone using Respondus. There's also a flagging feature, and what that does is allows you to flag an item, or for you to see items other instructors have flagged, if there's something like an error, maybe it's out of date, confusing wording, and the publisher gets this information too. So what you can do is you can take a peek at all of the items you have, manually hand pick a few you want to pull in, but you can also, make it even easier, go ahead and select those, have those questions selected automatically for you by question type. So if I pick this automatic selection, it will tell me how many multiple choice questions are in this chapter, 64, how many essay display or matching questions. And from here, maybe I just want to pick 10 of those multiple choice questions and assign each one 2 points. So I can do that here. And then add it to the end of my list of questions is in the currently open Respondus file. So right now it's copying those test questions from the test bank. Maybe I'm done or I want to add some more from another chapter. I can do that here. And here I get a copy of that question list with all of my new questions right here. Here they are. You can see what they look like and so on. Now I can add more test bank questions, and when I click finish, if I'm done, it'll take me over to the edit tab where I'm going to see those questions again. Now from here, if I need to change any of them, go ahead. You can bring them right up into that template and make any edits you want. Maybe you want to enhance the content and add an image, or maybe you want to fix something, remove or add an answer choice. It's entirely up to you. And don't forget, those test banks still exist in the projects folder or Respondus, the local folder where your other files exist. So you have access to them offline too. All right, so we've brought content in from Word documents. I've shown you how the templates work, so you can create test questions on your own with all those advanced features. Let's also talk about some of the settings that are available to you. One of the nice things about Respondus is that the settings on the Settings tab here are going to match the personality over here, your learning system. So anything that's available in the Settings tab is going to be available in your learning system, and you can apply those settings from within Respondus instead of going into your learning system and applying them. So here's a few examples. And one thing I'll also talk about as I get to this section, because this section I find to be really interesting in how you actually design your assessments here, not just the content, but how students take them. You know, we're often asked by Respondus Course users, instructors, how they can better design their online tests, especially to protect the content of your tests from being reused and copied by students, and to prevent students from cheating. So again, while these settings are also in your learning system, a lot of instructors just find it easier to apply them here. Do this all at once, and then the last thing you do is make it available. Now again, these are going to vary by learning system, but in general, most learning systems have a feature that allows you to create random blocks or question sets. So this is one of them here. And what this does is make sure that I can create tests that are different, questions are delivered to different students. So maybe I create a block of half of the questions in the test, and from that block, I only want 2 questions per student. Each student is going to see different test questions. So if they're sitting together in a proctored testing lab looking over each other's shoulder, they're not seeing the same question at the same time, or the same questions at all for that matter. Here on the Availability tab, there's a couple of features here, things like when to display the test. So students aren't even going to see it even if you publish it until you pick what date. And then maybe a deadline. You know, you want your students to finish the test by a certain date and time. You can apply that here as well. There's a password. You can protect the exam with a password. So again, if you're giving your test in a proctored setting, maybe you give that password to the proctor or to the student. Give it to them in a different format, like email. So there's a sort of a check and balance in place to make sure that they're the same student enrolled in the course. And then some other settings that might be available is things you may or may not do, things like allowing multiple attempts or not, only one attempt for the test. Time limits are also a great way to make sure students take the test and only take the test and don't look up answers. On the Other Settings tab, and again, these will be slightly different based on LMS, on learning system, but you might do things like randomize the question order for each assessment attempt. So different questions are seen at different times. I didn't mention it in randomizing answer choices. Some learning systems let you do randomizing answer choices from here. In this particular personality, that option is here on the Edit tab. There it is right there. And if you plan on showing the test results to your students or feedback, one thing you might not want to do is release the score or the grade to students until all of your students have taken the test. So maybe you want to prevent students from printing or copying questions after the test has been delivered. In other words, you're going to protect your test questions for future use. Then don't allow them to see the text when those scores are released. And, other things, if you're not familiar with that web application, we have other options for protecting your test too. I mentioned Lockdown Browser and Respondus Monitor earlier. A locked browser to lock down the testing environment. Respondus Monitor, which has a web view. Tons of information on our website. I'm not going to go into too much detail about those today. All right, so that is creating the content, applying settings to your test. One thing I also want to talk about, as I mentioned earlier, is I'm sure that many of you have already created tests in your online courses. Maybe you did it manually, maybe you imported it from somewhere, maybe you've used Respondus. And the next feature I'm going to talk about makes it really easy to reuse those questions, even if they weren't created with Respondus. It doesn't matter if you used our application before or not. This retrieval feature right here is probably the most unsung hero of Respondus 4. But it's great because you can take those test questions you already have, bring them from your learning system into Respondus, edit, copy those questions, add more questions to the file, and then publish it again. And this might be especially useful maybe if you're teaching more than one institution and you have more than one learning system that you use, or even within the same institution. Or maybe your institution is switching from one learning system to another. Folks that were using WebCT or Angel for a long time are maybe switching to something else. And this will help you keep your test content. So with retrieval, there are essentially 3 steps. The first thing is to retrieve your test questions. You want to make test questions. You want to pull that from your learning system. So we're going to do that right now. It's basically the backwards process of publishing. So it's going to ask for your server information again, same thing we did before when we published. I'm going to click next. And because I'm already, I got the server settings set up, it's going to ask which course you want to pull that test from. And it's going to list all of the tests I have. So let's pull that one that we just published. We'll pull it back into Respondus. And then we're going to enter a name for the new file. So I'm going to call this the Training Retrieval Example. And when I click next, it's just doing the opposite. It's pulling it from Blackboard into Respondus, or pulling it from your online course into Respondus. So in a couple of seconds, you'll see it completes itself, and we'll go back to that Edit tab so we can see the test question. Now again, it doesn't matter that I published this with Respondus in the first place. You could have created this test anyway, and it will still work. It has nothing to do with publishing from Respondus in the first place. Any test in your learning system will work. So here we go, we're done. So this is complete. Converted a few questions. And I'll go back to the Edit tab. And now, let me just click Finish here. It says Training Retrieval. This is the name of our file that we just created. And here are all those questions that we had previously published. Now I can take these test questions, and like I said before, I can edit them if I want to. Maybe the true-false question. Maybe I want to change this one, add an image to it, delete it altogether, whatever you want, because now I can then republish it. I can either publish it back to my same learning system, or maybe I want to publish it to a different learning system. Maybe I teach in a couple different departments, and one uses a different learning system. The way to do that is go back to the Start tab and just change the personality. So let's say I'm going to go from Blackboard to Moodle. It's going to warn me that it's going to convert the file for you, and it's going to tell me what kind of conversions I might have had to do. So maybe there are different settings in my second learning system. Point values, for example. Maybe there are question types that don't exist. And I can just replace the current file as a file that works for Moodle instead of Blackboard. And then from here, I can just go through publishing it again. Right? So now in the Moodle personality, I've got my Moodle server set up here. So that makes it really easy for you to pull your existing tests out of a learning system into Respondus, edit them, change them, and publish them again. All right, so we're talking about managing existing content. Even those of you who've been using Respondus 4 for a long time, you might not know some of the ways you can also manage the content you already have in Respondus. And let's say you have tons and tons of those tests in your project folders on your computer. We have a feature here called the Archive Wizard. We get asked about this often. But it's often overlooked by most users. So, think about the fact that your learning system may not save your old courses. I'm sure that those courses get archived or deleted after a certain period of time. So you might lose that test content if you don't keep it someplace else. And Respondus 4 can help you preserve those files. So if you have your files in Respondus, they're saved on your computer. And if you have a lot of those files, especially files that have media files associated with each one, images, things that are really rich or really long tests, lots of test questions, you can archive those files and organize them. So this Archive Wizard will help you compress existing files. So all I have to do for that is let's pull up the one we just did, the training All it does is you select which Respondus file you want to do, click Next, tell it where you want it to save it, and I'm going to save it in that content folder we have right here. And then it just creates a compressed archive version of the file. So if I actually go to that folder, I'm going to see, there it is. It's .rfa, it's the name of the file itself. So that just creates a compressed version of the file. And I could take that archive file and I could attach it to an email and send it to one of my colleagues if I want to share my test questions with somebody. So that's a great way to reuse content too between colleagues. And then if I want to bring files back from archives, let's say that I want to open one of those older files and I haven't taught this class in a long time, but I know I archived my file. Go to the Open button here on the Start tab, go to my archive, and maybe I need to browse here to where I saved that one. Now this one I have to save on my desktop. There it is right there. And then when I click Open, I can make a new folder, a new file, or erase the current file, which I just happen to have open here. I might not do that if I was actually archiving it. And then it's going to open that file for me. So now I have, it's going to create that new file for me. There's the unarchived or restored archive file right here. So it's the same file we were just working with. Save the file. All right, folks, I forgot that I was in Moodle. There we go. So here's the file we just restored from archive. And it'll bring it back in exactly the same as we saw it before. All the test questions down there. Sorry, I messed it up when I was in Moodle. But those are the basic steps to managing those files. And again, that will help you save some disk space on your computer. If you have big test files, you can make them portable. You can save them. If your learning system is archiving your courses, and you can also share them with your colleagues. All right, so you've seen all the features in Respondus, how much it can save you time, and a lot of the features that you can use. I want to point out before I get to the questions part, we've got a lot of resources available for instructors on our website. So after today, a couple of things I'll point out for you. If you go back and you start using Respondus for the first time, or if you're an old power user where you want to get some information about specific features we covered, don't forget this help feature right here in the application itself. So you have a searchable index and a nice menu here of all of the different features, a lot of those that we talked about today. So that's your first place to go. Go ahead, take a look at that, browse that if you want to as a way to get started. But also on the Respondus.com website, which is where we were before, Respondus.com, here on the Respondus Course section of our site, we've got great movies. Oops, sorry, folks, I clicked too fast. Some great demo movies about formatting questions, using publisher testing, importing, a lot of the things we talked about today. We also have guides for Respondus, so if you want a little quick start guide here, a PDF, just to help you with some of the basic features in Respondus. Excuse me. And there's also full user guides here. So that's even more detail about all of the features that I'm Respondus for. So whether you're new or an old hat, these are great resources for you that are just available right on our website. And we also have a relatively new section of our site called our new Respondus News section. You can sign up to follow the news here. We have a nice section on Respondus 4 with a lot of tech tips and different ways to use Respondus 4. So a lot of folks find this information useful as well. All right, so I promised we would get to questions, but before I answer your questions, I have a question for all of you. Right when you leave today's training webinar, I just want to ask, I want to hear from you, based on what you've learned today and thinking about your next steps with online testing, I just want to know, what are your greatest concerns or challenges as they relate to online testing? Regardless of how you've used Respondus 4, maybe those challenges are institutional, or creating the tests themselves, or using what kind of content you use, or maybe there's student-related concerns with cheating or sharing test questions. We want to know what those concerns are because we use this information as a company to improve our applications, and I use this information personally to make my future training even more valuable so the right things get addressed for all of you. So again, that'll show up once you exit GoToWebinar, a little window. Just take a couple seconds and give us a little answer there. We really appreciate it. And with that, we will take your questions. So one of our account managers on the line today, some of you might know her name is Anna Desmond. She has been reading your questions that you've been submitting. just going to read a few of them out loud for us in the time we have left. And please, if you keep submitting questions, if we don't get to them, let us know afterwards. You can reach out to me or your account manager or your local Respondus contact. So, Anna, are you there?
I'm here, Ari. Can you hear me?
I sure can.
Okay, excellent. Ari, we have some great questions, so I'm going to jump right in. First question is, can you show how to import an image as part of your question? So if you can go to one of the question types and just show how you would attach an image to it.
Sure. It's actually quite simple. Let me, so let's say I have a multiple choice question here, and I want to put an image in the question wording. I simply put my cursor where I want the image to go. So I'm going to say, what is this? And click this Media Wizard button right here. There's a little camera there, so it refers to images. And the Media Wizard will walk you through the steps of bringing in a file. So I can either upload a file from my computer, which is what I did before. You can see the image type that it will allow. I just click that. And then I browse on my computer for where those images are. In this case, they're in this file on my desktop. There's that image of a triangle that we saw before. I click Open. I can put some alt text in here for screen readers, or if I just want a description behind the image. I can resize it. In this case, I don't want to. And when I click Finish, there's this icon refers to the fact that there's an image in this question. So to see it, I click Preview, and there it is. And this is what it will look like to your students. Now, you can use the Media Wizard, and I should have mentioned this before, not just to embed images, but you can also link to files on websites. So if I click the second option here, Link to a media file, it actually will let me bring in images from a website. If I want to embed a link to an image, I can even embed a YouTube video or another type of audio-video file. So let's just go through embedding a YouTube video. Let's say I want to embed a video about Respondus 4. It will let me search YouTube. It'll show me some videos that are on YouTube. These are some of our tech tip videos. Oops, I don't actually want to play it. Let's select this one, and it will either embed it or put a link to it inside the question itself, which is really nice, because if you try to do this in your learning system, some of those learning systems are not easy to do this type of thing, and you have to know a little bit of HTML or use their editor, which isn't always as easy to use, and this makes it really simple for you. So you've got a lot of options in that Media Wizard, and there's what an embedded video looks like. Preview is the actual video right here. And that's, again, what your students will see. So, sorry, more information than you wanted to know, but I get excited about these features.
All right, that's great. Thank you. We had a question about assigning point values to questions. So if you could just go over how that's done, that would be great.
Sure, there's a couple ways to do it. Let me actually open a better file here because this one is empty. Let me open the file we were working on before, this training file. On the Edit tab, you can assign, sorry folks, I didn't save the file before. Try this again, open a different file. You can assign point values either right here in the question list. So if I click on the point value and I want to change that to 5, go right ahead. Look how easy that is. I can also, as I'm creating the question, there's a point value field, and you'll see this in all of the templates. If I want to edit an individual question, use this drop-down menu. So let's edit. I have a web link in there. And there's the point value field. We can do that as well. Or if I'm importing, like I was importing from that Word document before, there's a way to also include the point values in the Word document. So if you wanted every question in your entire file to be 5 points, you just put point value at the top of the file, and it will assign that point value to every subsequent question. Likewise, you can do that with the test-based network. When you do that automatic selection of 10 multiple choice questions that we did before, you're going to assign the point value there. So it's making it really easier for you to kind of assign that point value in one place and apply it to multiple questions if you want, or just edit it on a question-by-question basis.
All right, we have a question as well about the LMSs that we integrate with. So if you could actually go back to the initial screen and just show which LMSs what the Respondus is available for.
So we were, and available for means you can publish and retrieve seamlessly to and from the learning system. That's the part where we talk to your online courses. Angel, Blackboard, Desire to Learn, eCollege, which I think is now called Pearson Learning Studio, Instructure, Canvas by Instructure, Moodle, and we even still have a list of Vista and CE. Those aren't supported anymore, but they're still on that list. We also have the ability to do a platform neutral one, so if you just want to print from Respondus, that works. And there's an IMS QTI version, so if you are using the question standards and you want to then bring that into one of the living systems that's not on this list.
Okay, all right, thank you. We have a question about the standard format for importing documents. If you could just show where that formatting guide is available.
So go to the help file. Anywhere you see this little question mark here, and so that's one way to get it. And you can search, if you want to just search on standard format or import, it will show up right there in your answer list. And then here it is. This looks like a lot, but I'll tell you right now, like I said before, once you do this formatting in a Word document or whatever the file is you're going to use, it's pretty easy to remember exactly how to do it the next time. And you can even use some of the auto formatting in Microsoft to number things and letter answer choices and things like that. But this is how to get to it. You can also get to it from where it lives in the start menu, which is the import wizard right here. It's available for here. There's the one for common delimited files. And then you also, oops, closed that by mistake, sorry folks. If you're in the import wizard itself and you click help, it'll take you right to it. So that's even faster.
All right, can you explain about the test bank network? Is it a separate application or is it part of Respondus 4.0?
No, it's a service. It's not a separate application, and it works as part of Respondus 4. So if your institution has Respondus 4, if you're using it now, and you've adopted a textbook that's in the test bank, it's free. It's built right into the application. So you can open Respondus right now, open that test bank network wizard, search for your book. Or if you are curious, go to our website right now and go to the test bank network section right here and search. Go ahead and see if your book is there. There are, if I left this blank and click search, there are, I think, over 6,200 titles. Yep. So we add new titles all the time. So there's a good chance that you've got a book from one of the major publishers in higher ed that is there.
All right, we had a question, a follow-up question to that, where the person is asking if they haven't adopted the textbook, if they could still use that test bank.
No, because the request actually goes to the publisher, so the publisher is going to need to verify that you are an instructor who's adopted the book. Now, if you're somebody like an instructional designer, another support staff, or maybe you're creating your test on behalf of a faculty member, you certainly could still use the test bank, but the request should come from the instructor. You can talk to the publisher about that directly if they would give you permission to use it anyway, even though you're not the instructor. That makes sense. What we want to avoid is, them not knowing who you are using the test bank and students getting their hands-on test questions for tests.
Okay, thanks, Ari. All right, we're running up on time, but there's a couple more quick questions I'd like to squeeze in. I'll start with, if you have a quiz that's in your LMS, can you import it back into Respondus for printing, or rather retrieve it, is what it would be?
Yes. Yep, retrieve is the word for it. Import, sure, that works too, but we call it retrieval. And here is the tab where that happens. So pick your learning system type here, go to the Retrieval tab, and walk through this wizard here. Basically the opposite of publishing. It will ask you for the server information, and it will pull your test back into Respondus. Once you get that test in Respondus, you can do whatever you want with it. You can print it, you can edit it, you can save it, just not use it, save it for an archive if you wanted to keep a record of it. You can also publish it back into your LMS, whether it's the same one or a different one. As long as you have that integration, you can move that test around. So yeah.
Okay, great. All right, I'm going to go with one more. Whoops, hold on a second. And I think we talked about that. I'm sorry, I'm kind of rereading these again. A couple of them are doubling up. Okay, so when information is retrieved from an LMS, does it delete the original set of information from the LMS?
No, if you're, nope, it's just pulling the content and making a copy of it in your local Respondus file.
Okay, great. And unfortunately, I think that's all we have time for, but I do want to thank everyone for attending today. And at this point, I will turn it back over to you, Ari.
Great, thanks, folks. I think we had said this session was 45 minutes. I know we went a little over, but I'm glad we got to a lot of your questions. So thank you so much for joining today. Thank you, Anna, for your help with the Q&A. And if you want more information after today, we've got guides, movies, and more on our website. You can also work with our technical support team if you have any technical questions. And don't forget that help within Respondus itself is a great place to start. So thanks so much for joining. We appreciate your time and have a lovely day.